My first wife passed away 12 years ago, and I was really young at that time. It's been hard for me to move on, but I did my best to get over the loss and move on. I loved her in the past, but it's my past now, and I need to live the present for myself. I found another love. I met my girlfriend 7 years ago. I love her, and she has always respected that I am a widow. I don't really name my first wife except on occasions when I tell an anecdote where she is there, and I don't have pictures or anything of her in my home. I want to give my girlfriend the place she deserves. I've had many bad experiences in a grief help group and learned what not to do in a new relationship. I'm going to get married in November. At first, I didn't know whether to invite my first wife's family because I didn't know if they would want to attend, so I never said anything to them or invited them to the wedding. I don't talk with them except for a text every few months, but her mother was the one who texted me to tell me that she would be very happy to go, so I ended up inviting her and her husband. They kinda invited themselves, and I have problems with saying no, much more in that kind of situation. On the weekend, we were putting some things together, and my mother told me that it would be good to put an extra chair in honor of my first wife. That was an idea of my late wife's mother, but she didn't talk about that with me first, but with my mother. We pay per seat, each chair we put up is charged as if it were a person. They would even charge me for drink and food, as if someone was really present. And honestly, I am quite tight financially on the wedding, so I think it would be a waste of money in something symbolic. Because if I do that for her, I also have to do that for all the members of my family who died, because they would complain about it. My father and brother also died, so that would be even more money. I'm not a spiritual person neither, so I don't believe in those things, and I don't like any kind of ritual or symbolic thing. I also don't want to have a moment to talk about deceased people and unalive the atmosphere. I just want a nice and joyful wedding for my girlfriend. Just to make my mother shut up, I said that if someone offers to pay the money, I will ask for more chairs. There would be 7 relatives. Too many. I knew that nobody was going to pay for that because I can't spend money on more things. But no one talked, and I thought that she would forget that. But my mother said that then I should include photos of me with my first wife when they show the typical video of the bride and groom as they grow up. I just don't want to do that. I even find it disrespectful for my girlfriend to put pictures of my first wife when I'm getting married again, let alone make a whole video about those times. It's just weird to me, but I know that there are widowers who have done so. It leaves me confused. My first wife appears in some of the photos I chose to go through in the video, not the one my mother wants me to do, in photos where I'm traveling with friends or family. It's not that I'm hiding her identity or anything like that, but I just want that moment to be my wife and mine. I already healed. My mother and family in general have been doing everything to make me feel guilty. And honestly, it's hard not to feel guilty when the words come from a person who went through the same thing as me. I know my girlfriend would agree because she's really kind, and she has already said that she is not really interested in what others think because she is the one who will be my wife. I'm the one who feels uncomfortable. Am I the idiot? I want that moment to be my girlfriend and mine. I already had that moment with my first wife years ago. Now I want to have this moment with her. Is it a bad thing? To add, please stop recommending me to make a table with photos of the dead, make a speech, put centerpieces, etc. I don't want to do any of that. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1, not the idiot. I said that if someone offers to pay the money for the chairs, I will do it because I can't spend money on more things. But no one talked. Then my mother said that I should include photos of me with my first wife when they show the typical video of the bride and groom as they grow up. You need to shut this right down now. Don't make it an issue about money. Tell your mother and your late wife's parents that you won't be having any memorial of your late wife on your wedding day to your new wife. There are 364 days in the year to honor the memory of your late wife, but the wedding day is not the day to do that. Comment 2. Not the idiot. I agree with you. This moment should be all about you and your current. Don't forget the past, but celebrate the now and the future you will have together. I also lost my wife too young and too soon to cancer. She will always carry a piece of my spirit wherever she is now. But death has done us part, and I would not and did not ever include her in a future marriage wedding, certainly not to the extent that your mother and late wife's mother suggest. And I am sure that my late wife would understand and not want to be included either. I agree with you, it would be too disrespectful and too uncomfortable. Now for the update, thanks for reading my last post. So things have taken quite a turn since then. After my mother suggested putting an extra chair for my first wife, I thought the issue was settled when no one offered to pay for it. But it turns out my mother wasn't ready to let it go. She brought it up again, this time more forcefully, saying it was the right thing to do, and that I was being disrespectful to my late wife's memory. This put me in a really tough spot because I didn't want to upset my mother, but I also didn't want to ruin the wedding for my girlfriend. My mother then took it upon herself to talk to my first wife's parents about the chair. They were all for it, and even offered to pay for it themselves. This made things even more complicated because now it wasn't just about the money, it was about the principle. I felt cornered and didn't know how to say no without causing a huge family rift. My girlfriend, bless her heart, said she was okay with whatever I decided, but I could tell she was uncomfortable with the whole situation. Then, out of nowhere, my first wife's mother called me. She said she understood if I didn't want the chair but suggested a compromise, a small photo of my first wife on a side table, just as a quiet nod to her memory. I was torn. On one hand, it seemed like a reasonable compromise, but on the other hand, I knew it would still make my girlfriend uncomfortable. I decided to talk to my girlfriend about it, and she said she would support whatever decision I made, but I could see the hurt in her eyes. As if that wasn't enough, my mother then suggested that I include a few photos of my first wife in the wedding video. This was the last straw for me. I felt like my wedding was being hijacked by the memory of my first wife, and it was supposed to be a day about my girlfriend and me. I told my mother that I wasn't going to include any photos of my first wife in the video, and she accused me of trying to erase her memory. This led to a huge argument, and now my mother isn't speaking to me. In the midst of all this, my first wife's parents started to get more involved. They began calling me regularly, offering suggestions for the wedding. It felt like they were trying to turn the wedding into a memorial service for their daughter. I was getting more and more stressed out, and it was starting to affect my relationship with my girlfriend. She tried to be supportive, but I could tell she was getting fed up with the whole situation. Then came the breaking point. My first wife's mother sent me a long email detailing all the ways I could honor her daughter at the wedding. She even suggested a moment of silence during the ceremony. I was furious. This was supposed to be a happy day for my girlfriend and me, not a tribute to my first wife. I decided to call her and tell her that I wasn't going to do any of the things she suggested. She was upset and said she wouldn't come to the wedding if I didn't honor her daughter in some way. I told her that was her choice, and she hung up on me. This whole situation has left me feeling incredibly guilty and torn. I want to honor my first wife's memory, but not at the expense of my current relationship. My girlfriend has been amazing through all of this, but I can tell it's wearing on her. She's been more distant lately, and I can't blame her. This was supposed to be our special day, and it's turning into a nightmare. Looking back, I realized that I should have set boundaries from the beginning. I should have been clear with my mother and my first wife's parents about what I was comfortable with. But now, it's too late. The damage has been done, and I'm not sure how to fix it. My mother is still not speaking to me, and my first wife's parents have said they won't come to the wedding. This has caused a lot of tension in the family, and I'm worried it will affect my relationship with my girlfriend in the long run. I also can't help but think about my first wife and what she would have wanted. I know she would have wanted me to be happy and to move on with my life, but it's hard to move on when her memory is constantly being brought up. I feel like I'm stuck in the past, and it's affecting my future. In the end, I decided not to include any photos of my first wife in the wedding video, and not to have a chair or a moment of silence for her. It was a tough decision, but I felt it was the right one for my relationship with my girlfriend. I want our wedding to be about us and our future together, not about the past. Thank you for reading. Am I the idiot for getting a vasectomy without telling my wife because she won't discipline our troubled son? Me and my wife have been discussing for years that we wanted a large family. After we had our first child, a boy, we decided to wait 2 years to have another. It's now been a little over 6 years, and it has been a roller coaster. We have completely different parenting philosophies, as she does not believe in spankings or discipline at all, for that matter. She thinks our 7-year-old, for whatever reason, is able to rationalize between right and wrong. Our biggest argument occurred last summer when our son threw a rock at a woman while we were hiking. We were above them on the trail, and it hit her right on the head to where she was bleeding so heavily EMS had to be called. I was embarrassed and so livid that when we got back to the hotel, I snapped, pushed him to the ground, stood over him, and gave him a piece of my mind. My wife was not happy and in turn took our son, got a different hotel, and told my mother-in-law that she was contemplating leaving me because she fears for the safety of our son. That was the only time I ever snapped at our kid, and there have been so many other times where I've wanted to. When he raised the window on our dog's head and nearly decapitated her, I had to back off. When he urinated in our neighbor's pool in front of his young daughters, I had to back off. We've done therapy and counseling. Needless to say that till this day, nothing has changed. I decided to bring it up in one of our counseling sessions that I was considering getting a vasectomy, and she flipped to the point where our entire ride home she was bawling because she felt as if I was giving up on our dream of having a big family. Her argument was that I was thinking about myself and weaponizing my body as a means to enforce my ideals instead of talking to her. However, that's the thing. I've spent the last several years telling her that what we're doing with our son is not working. The gentle parenting, therapy, and medication are not working. So the best thing I can do for myself at this point is not have any more children with the person who will not let me have any input when it comes to disciplining our child. So this week, I actually got the vasectomy, and my wife was unaware from the time I scheduled to the day of the operation, and I told her during breakfast. She has threatened to divorce me because she does not want to spend the rest of her life with someone who will go to such lengths to get their way. Every time we've discussed me getting a vasectomy, she's said that I'm blowing things out of proportion and that having children was a part of our future. At this point, I don't even care anymore. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Wow, this is all such a chaotic situation. You two should definitely not have any more children until you both can go through some therapy, get on the same page, and get your current child in check. Your child is 7 years old, and a 7-year-old should and would know better than to throw rocks. While mistakes and bad judgment calls can happen, the huge red flag here is that the kid didn't even feel remorse afterward and immediately went back to using his iPad. You guys need to figure out how to parent your child before he becomes a fully fledged psycho. Comment 2. You're being aggressive and violent towards your child, and you think that will stop him from being aggressive and violent. He has problems, likely caused by your parenting, and needs to be in therapy. You and your wife need parenting classes. Neither just being passive, permissive, nor being aggressive and violent are good ways to parent, and hitting children is abuse and not effective discipline. Educate yourself. Now for the update. Thanks for all the comments from the last post, so here's what's been happening since then. After I told my wife about the vasectomy, things got really tense. She didn't speak to me for the rest of the day and spent most of her time locked in our bedroom. I tried to give her space, but it was hard not to feel the weight of her silence. That night, she slept in our son's room, and I was left alone to think about what I had done. I knew it was a drastic step, but I felt like I had no other choice. The next morning, she finally came out and we had a long, heated argument. She accused me of betraying her and going behind her back. I tried to explain my side, that I felt cornered and unheard, but she wasn't having any of it. She said she needed time to think and left the house, taking our son with her. I didn't know where she went, and she didn't answer my calls or texts. A couple of days later, she came back and told me she had been staying with her mother. She said she needed to be around someone who understood her and could offer her support. I felt a pang of jealousy and anger, but I knew I couldn't blame her. We decided to go back to counseling, but this time, it felt different. There was a lot more resentment and hurt on both sides. During one of our sessions, the counselor suggested we take a break from each other to really think about what we wanted. My wife agreed, and I reluctantly went along with it. She moved in with her mother, taking our son with her. The house felt empty and quiet without them, and I had a lot of time to reflect on everything that had happened. While they were gone, I tried to keep myself busy. I went to work, hung out with friends, and even picked up a new hobby. But no matter what I did, I couldn't shake the feeling of loneliness and regret. I missed my wife and son, and I wondered if I had made a huge mistake. One night, I got a call from my wife. She sounded upset and asked if we could meet up to talk. We agreed to meet at a park near her mother's house. When I got there, she was sitting on a bench, looking tired and worn out. We talked for hours, and for the first time in a long time, it felt like we were really listening to each other. She admitted that she had been struggling with our son's behavior too, and that she felt overwhelmed and unsure of what to do. I told her about my frustrations and how I felt like I had no say in how we were raising him. We both cried and hugged, and it felt like a small step towards healing. We decided to give our marriage another shot, but with some changes. We agreed to work together on finding a balance between discipline and gentle parenting. We also decided to take a break from trying for more kids and focus on our son and our relationship. The next few days were tough, but we were both committed to making things work. We had more open and honest conversations, and it felt like we were finally on the same page. We also started looking into different parenting strategies and even found a new therapist who specialized in behavioral issues. One day, while we were at the park with our son, he had a meltdown over something small. Instead of getting angry or frustrated, we both stayed calm and tried to understand what was going on. It was a small victory, but it felt huge. We were finally working together as a team. But then, something unexpected happened. My wife's mother called and asked to meet with me. I was hesitant, but I agreed. When I got to her house, she sat me down and told me that she had been talking to my wife and that she was worried about our marriage. She said that she had seen how much we both loved each other and our son, but that she was concerned about the long-term effects of our disagreements. She suggested that we consider a trial separation to really figure out what we wanted. I was taken aback and didn't know what to say. I felt like we were finally making progress, and the thought of separating again was terrifying. But she made some good points, and I couldn't ignore the fact that we still had a lot of issues to work through. When I got home, I told my wife about the conversation. She was surprised, but not entirely opposed to the idea. We talked about it for a long time and decided to give it some more thought. We both knew that we needed to do what was best for our son and our marriage, even if it meant taking a step back. In the end, we decided to try the trial separation. My wife and son moved back in with her mother, and I stayed at our house. It was hard, but we both agreed that it was the best thing for us right now. We continued to go to counseling and worked on our communication and parenting strategies. During this time, I had a lot of moments of self-reflection. I thought about my own upbringing and how it had shaped my views on discipline and parenting. I realized that I had been holding on to a lot of anger and resentment from my own childhood, and that it was affecting my relationship with my son and wife. I knew I needed to work on myself and let go of the past if I wanted to be a better husband and father. As the weeks went by, we started to see some positive changes. Our son's behavior improved, and we were both more patient and understanding with each other. We still had a long way to go, but it felt like we were finally on the right track. But then something happened that tested my loyalty and commitment to my family. I got a job offer in another city, one that would require me to move away from my wife and son. It was a great opportunity, and the pay was significantly higher than my current job. I was torn. On one hand, it could provide a better future for my family, but on the other hand, it would mean being away from them during a critical time in our relationship. I talked to my wife about it, and she was supportive but also worried about the impact it would have on our marriage. We both knew that we needed to make a decision that was best for our family, even if it meant making sacrifices. In the end, I decided to turn down the job offer. My family was more important to me than any job, and I knew that we needed to be together to work through our issues. It was a tough decision, but I felt like it was the right one. So, that's where we are now. We're still working on our marriage and parenting, but it feels like we're finally making progress. Thanks for reading. Am I the idiot for leaving my husband after he quit his job and hid alone from me? I've been with my husband for 8 years now. For the first 7 years, we planned heavily because we both wanted a child, but we needed to make sure we had everything just right because I was very firm in the fact that I would never be okay with sending our child to daycare. I was going to be a stay-at-home mom. He 100% agreed. We bought the house, we built the nursery, we saved every penny we could afford to save, etc. Right now, we are sitting on a very nice nest egg of just over $150,000. I got pregnant in December 2022. I gave birth in the very beginning of September. It has been an absolute shoot show since then. So to kick off, within the first 2 months of me giving birth and having severe postpartum depression, he decides to make a completely out-of-the-blue career change. I urge him to go get checked by his primary care physician for postpartum depression, because surely something must be wrong to be making such a life-changing decision with zero warning so soon after I give birth. He refuses, insists that he is fine, but that his career is all of a sudden too much and it's taking too much time away from bonding with the baby. Literally a normal 40-hour work week, but he was getting pissed because for the last 2 weeks of his employment, his boss had been asking that he works 4 hours every Saturday, his normal day off, but it's only 4 hours. So he quits. He gets a job elsewhere 2 days later and takes a $4, 50-hour pay cut. Okay, no big deal. Except now he has to pay $160 out of each paycheck for the mandatory benefits and work fees. That doesn't include taxes. He also has been working 6 days a week, versus the 5 that he was working. So less time at home, but, well, they said I could probably get the manager, so I guess it's okay. He is bringing in no more than $300 a paycheck, in comparison to the $600 plus paychecks he was getting. Our bills are almost $2,000 a month. Therefore, we have had to pay out of our savings every single month, and it adds up quickly. Well, here's where I may be a jerk. Bills are obviously due soon. I asked him how much money he had set aside for the bills so I could work through the numbers. He tells me that he wasn't able to save anything for bills and he literally has $4 in his account, meaning come the 1st, all of the bill money will be coming out of our savings. He tells me, maybe you need to start looking for a job. My mom will probably watch the baby. I just don't freaking say anything because I know I'm going to explode. His mom comes here this morning and he runs it by her, without even getting my approval, which would absolutely be a hard no because I'm quite certain she's in the early stages of dementia. And she goes, no, but I know a daycare that has openings, and proceeds to call them and tell them that we want to enroll our daughter. I speak up and say, no, I'm not putting the baby in daycare. I'm also not having her watch the baby. It's not happening, and my husband needs to figure it out. My mother-in-law then tells me that it's not fair that I won't come up with solutions to help her son, who is clearly struggling. I snap. I tell her that it is not my job to come up with solutions for a man who failed me and our child. We had everything planned, we had the money, we figured this out and spent years figuring it out before coming to this point. Now he is going against the plan. He decided to quit his job. He refused to get help when I urged him to. He didn't save any of his paychecks for bills. This is on him, 100%. Before anyone could respond, I went inside and packed an overnight bag for both me and the baby, and told him I'd be going to my mother's house until he got his shoot together and got his head on straight. He is mostly texting me saying that he can't believe I think he is failing us. But his mother is blowing up my phone saying that I'm a dumb jerk, and that plans change. And since I'm married to her son, and he's the only one working, that he should be the final say in what happens from this point forward. Am I the jerk? To add, spelling. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Not the idiot, but you need to tell your husband that he cannot put himself first when he has a child. He's upset because he had to work on a Saturday twice? He proved himself untrustworthy when it comes to the really important things. He completely messed up your plans without caring about you or your child. And his mom calling you a dumb person is unacceptable. He needs to scold his mother for that. Comment 2. Are you certain he quit his former job instead of being fired? Quitting a job over 4 hours of Saturday work, then taking a job with all-day Saturday work just doesn't make sense, especially with that significant pay cut. Now for the update. Hey everyone, thanks for reading. So after I left for my mom's house, things got even more complicated. My husband kept texting me, saying he was trying to figure things out, but I wasn't seeing any real effort. I was at my mom's for 3 days, and during that time, I had a lot of time to think. I was still dealing with postpartum depression, and being away from home didn't help. My mom tried to be supportive, but she was also worried about the baby and me. On the second day, my husband showed up at my mom's house unannounced. He looked exhausted and stressed out. He said he wanted to talk, so we went for a walk around the block. He admitted that he felt overwhelmed and that he didn't know how to handle everything. He said he missed us and wanted to make things right. I told him that quitting his job without discussing it with me was a huge mistake, and that we needed to work together to find a solution. Then he dropped a shocker. He confessed that he had been hiding something from me. He had taken out a personal loan a few months ago to cover some unexpected expenses, and he hadn't told me about it. The loan payments were eating into his paycheck, which was why he hadn't been able to save any money for bills. I was furious. I couldn't believe he had kept this from me, especially when we were already struggling financially. We went back to my mom's house, and I told him that we needed to come up with a plan to get back on track. We sat down and went through our finances together. It was clear that we couldn't keep dipping into our savings to cover our bills. We needed to find a way to increase our income or reduce our expenses. The next day, my husband went back to his new job and asked if there were any opportunities for overtime or additional shifts. They told him that there might be some extra hours available, but it wasn't guaranteed. He also started looking for part-time work that he could do in the evenings or on weekends. Meanwhile, I started looking into work-from-home opportunities that would allow me to stay with the baby. We also had a long conversation about our priorities and what we needed to do to get through this tough time. We agreed that our daughter's well-being was the most important thing, and we needed to make sure she was taken care of. We also decided that we needed to be more transparent with each other about our finances and any major decisions. As for my mother-in-law, she continued to be a source of stress. She kept calling and texting, insisting that I was being unreasonable and that I needed to support her son. I tried to explain to her that we were working on a solution, but she wouldn't listen. She even showed up at our house one evening demanding to talk to me. My husband had to ask her to leave, which caused even more tension between us. In the midst of all this, I started to think about my own family history. My parents had gone through a similar financial crisis when I was a child. My dad had lost his job, and my mom had to go back to work to make ends meet. It had been a tough time for our family, but they had managed to get through it by working together and supporting each other. I realized that I needed to take a page from their book and find a way to support my husband while also making sure our daughter was taken care of. One night, after the baby had gone to sleep, my husband and I sat down and had a heart-to-heart conversation. We talked about our fears, our hopes, and our dreams for the future. He admitted that he had been feeling a lot of pressure to provide for us, and that he had made some bad decisions out of desperation. I told him that I understood, but that we needed to be a team and work together to find a solution. We decided to make some changes to our lifestyle to reduce our expenses. We canceled some of our subscriptions, started cooking more meals at home, and looked for ways to save on utilities. We also agreed to set aside time each week to go over our finances and make sure we were on track. In the end, we managed to come up with a plan that would allow us to get through this tough time without having to dip into our savings too much. My husband found a part-time job that he could do in the evenings, and I started doing some freelance work from home. It wasn't easy, but we were making progress. As for my mother-in-law, we had to set some boundaries with her. My husband had a long talk with her and explained that we needed her support, but that she also needed to respect our decisions as parents. It wasn't an easy conversation, but it was necessary. Looking back, I realized that this experience has brought us closer together as a family. We've had to face some tough challenges, but we've also learned a lot about ourselves and each other. We're still working through things, but I feel more hopeful about the future. Thanks for reading. If you liked this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.